Good morning and welcome back to the lecture series. Today we are going to discuss one of the most prominent works. So 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez stands as a groundbreaking example of magical realism, and it plays a substantial role in actually shaping the genre of uh, magical realism. Having been published in 1987, this is a novel that has been written and which reflects the political turbulence prevalent in Latin America. The incorporation of magical realism in the novel is a reflection of the prevailing socio-political climate during that period when Marquez was writing the work. So, magical realism as a literary genre intertwines the mundane with the supernatural, frequently serving as a means to question or problematize the established political and social structures. Marquez's novel unfolds in the fictional town of Macondo, drawing inspiration from his own upbringing in Aracataca, which is a place in Colombia. So, we see a lot of reflection of Aracataca in the fictional town of Macondo in 100 Years of Solitude. The narrative traces the tumultuous saga of the Buendia family, which is marked by a sequence of unfortunate events and magical happenings spanning over a period of 1 century. Magical realism is one of the most prominent literary devices of the 20th century when we look at the different literary movements and the literary phenomena happening. Its development led into the inception of black awareness and the way they were suppressed by colonial powers. So, magical realism, the bringing of the extraordinary, the fantastic, the magical alongside the mundane becomes a very strong literary tool and device for making a commentary on the colonial apparatus for oppressing the non-white populace, right? So, we have already discussed how magical realism plays a key role in you know in discussing post-colonial gender, race and ethnic issues, the issues pertaining to the questions of race, gender, ethnicity and so forth. So, the magical is brought in as a way of showing the flaws, the problems in our everyday real society which we otherwise do not question, right? So, we see our society afresh, anew through the eye of a child, through the lens of magical realism. So, magical realism is artistically deployed or employed in order to rethink the reality of the world. In magical realism, there are always two spheres that are associated with this genre, namely the tangible and the enchanted. So, the tangible part, the palpable part of the genre of or of any magical realist text comprises the everyday mundane life, the happenings that are ordinary, that are believable. So, in magical realist texts, the domains of the deceased and the enchanted, on the other hand, becomes very strong and prominent. Therefore, in almost all the magic realist texts, the reader finds the appearance of the ghost. The ghost is the haunting of the past, some past happening, some past symbol, keeps coming back in a magical realist text, comes back to haunt the people, the characters in the present. And so we see that there is an interface, there is a kind of exchange or a kind of meeting point between the living and the dead, the present and the ghost from the past. According to Louis Parkinson, Zamora and Wendy Faris, magical realism or magic realism is originated as a comeback on the European rationale, the concept of reasoning and logic, scientific logic, which was a device used for demeaning the dignity and the alternative world systems of the colonized people. The European rational system wanted to impose its own order of logic, reason and enlightenment, thereby erasing and effacing the alternative ways of understanding the world that existed in the different colonies of the non-Western countries. So, magical realism as a narrative technique holds subjective exaggeration. Exaggeration becomes a literary technique in order to critique, in order to accentuate and further deepen the sense of irony, and thereby make a commentary on the questions of colonialism or colonization, race, ethnicity, patriarchy, war and so on. So, we see that magical realism makes use of exaggeration, myth, history, time, ambiguous reality and supernaturalism. So, the ghosts are very frequent in magical realist texts. So, magical realism is a literary style where peculiar, otherworldly and fantastical stories are narrated as if they were ordinary occurrences. In contrast to the fairy tale like traditional once upon a time storytelling approach, which highlights the extraordinary nature of imaginary events, in the case of magical realism, one sees that there is a seamless integration of the surreal into the narrative, presenting the fantastic elements, the surreal elements as a natural and inherent part of the ordinary world. So, while in the genre of fantasy, in the genre of fairy tale, a figure of a mermaid or an otherworldly figure would be shown as a concentrate of wonder, a concentrate of amazement, of something that is out of the blue. Here we see in the case of magical realism, the extraordinary, the surreal is very smoothly foisted into and presented as a natural and inherent part of this world and this worldly. So, magical realism exhibits several stylistic characteristics with a central emphasis on rejecting subjectivity and emotionalism, incorporating the simultaneous portrayal of the past, present and future, and employing defamiliarization. We have already talked about Ostronomy in our previous lecture. So, Gabriel Garcia Marquez employs magical realism as a literary device, blending it with the historical and political content in order to explore profound and challenging themes. So, the concept of race, gender, ethnicity, colonization, colonial apparatus, patriarchy, all these things can be dealt with in a serious tone, as one does through essays or some serious genre, but they can also be dealt with in a more light-hearted fashion, as one sees in the case of magical realism, right? Very challenging themes, very profound themes are being dealt with, but in a light-hearted fashion. So Marquez's narrative delves into topics such as war, suffering, and death, thereby providing a clear and politically oriented perspective. By the mid 1960s, Colombia had actually experienced over 200,000 deaths attributable to political motivations, and this is something that becomes the life force, that becomes the kind of soul and energy inspiring this novel. Through the novel, Marquez unfolds a fabricated narrative within an imaginary backdrop, skillfully blending realistic aspects of life such as poverty and domestic course with fantastical occurrences. This serves multiple purposes. Firstly, it is a way of acquainting the reader with Marquez's portrayal of Colombia, where myths, omens, folklores, telltales, superstitions coexist alongside technology and modernity. Secondly, this style of narration prompts the reader to contemplate the boundary between reality and fantasy, particularly within the context of politics. Marquez's novel is also similar to an anthropological exploit because it emphasizes the discovery of truth through language and myth. The three primary mythical components of the novel include references to classical stories that allude to or refer to the foundations and origins, the characters that are reminiscent of mythical heroes, and finally, the inclusion of supernatural elements. So, Garcia Marquez also illustrates magic realism through the description of his characters. For example, in describing Melquez, he says the following, I quote, "He is a fugitive from all plagues and catastrophes that had ever lashed mankind," unquote. So, in Macondo, the inexorable and unavoidable recurrence of history holds a prominent role. The characters find themselves ensnared by their pasts and entangled in the intricacies of time. So the characters are almost, operating, functioning within a loop of time. They are in a time loop. So it is very difficult to disentangle past from future, from present. They are almost simultaneously in past and present, right? It's difficult to say present from past. Ghastly visitations occur consistently throughout this novel, serving as symbolic representations of the past and its haunting influence on Macondo. The ghosts and the recurring patterns that these ghastly figures evoke are deeply rooted in the specific historical evolution of Latin America. So, through the ghastly figures, through the paranormal events and occurrences and experiences, there is a kind of a commentary on the historical evolution of Latin America. One could say that a mini history, a parallel history, a magical history is being written through this genre of magical realism by Marquez. So, a critic like Jean Belvillada would say, I quote, "The magic realism in Garcia Marquez's novel forms a broad and diverse spectrum ranging from the literally extraordinary, though nonetheless possible, to the farthest extremes of the physically fabulous and unlikely," unquote. Illustrations of this phenomenon include Colonel Buendia's 32 failed uprisings, and then we have this reference to the prolonged rainstorm that lasted 4 years, 11 months and 2 days, a rain that went on for constantly for 4 years, 11 months and 2 days. And then Fernandez intricately marked calendar of sexual encounters where there is a precise totaling of 42 available days. In his book, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, 100 Years of Solitude, Michael Wood says, I quote, Colombia has a long tradition of democracy. The liberals and the conservatives who dominated 19th and most of 20th century politics stood for quite different things: reform or reaction, free trade or protection, separation and conjunction of church and state, and slowly turned into a rather narrow band of class interests, unquote. So, all these things are being commented upon, all these things are being observed through a parallel history, a parallel, a parallel depiction of Colombia's history, the Latin American past, through deploying the magical realist techniques in 100 years of solitude. So, Marquez incorporates magical realism in the novel in order to unveil postmodern elements which seamlessly merge the authentic or plausible alongside the extraordinarily fantastical. So, through this amalgamation, through this interface and mishmash, he presents his version of Colombia to the reader, where the myths, omens, and legendary figures coexist alongside advancements in technology and modernity. What is more, the use of textualization, straightforward presentation, the simultaneous existence of reality and magic, the metafiction, imaginative elements, the ghosts, superstitions, exaggerations, flashbacks, and flash forwards all together, uh, make the cosmos, the microcosm within which the magically real Macondo is described. These are the key literary devices employed in this narrative in order to describe, in order to take the readers through the events happening in Macondo. So, Marquez has established himself as a trailblazer in the realm of magical realism. Through his novel, he provides a window into the thoughts and the convictions of the author himself, offering a literary voice to Latin America. So, employing the form of magical realism and drawing content from history and politics, Marquez addresses profound and challenging themes. By the mid 1960s, Colombia had experienced over 200,000 deaths with political motivations. So, the intricate and convoluted domain of politics undergoes intense examination in this narrative, especially in the sections that are focusing on Colonel Aureliano Buendia. So, Marquez, in his 100 Years of Solitude, demystifies the process of American history by pointing out the negative role in the evolution and decline of Macondo. The notion of biblical myth is strongly disrupted by challenging the idea of resurrection or rebirth in the current history. This disruption encompasses the evolution, decline, and rejuvenation of fundamental human beliefs and ideologies. Across generations, the reader finds that the Buendias exhibit traits such as immaturity, inflexibility, especially this is evident in Colonel Aureliano's callousness and a lack of willpower, uh, preventing both individuals and the group from making any kind of progress due to persistent adherence to certain established patterns of behavior, right? So, in the realm of sociopolitical determinism, the Buendia family stands opposed to the government. There is a kind of immaturity, there is a kind of inflexibility and callousness which disables them from making any kind of progress. As a magical realist, Marquez deliberately omits certain events and descriptions. So, this is also something that connects the genre of magical realism to the goals of a postmodern writing, a postmodern artwork. We have talked while discussing Milan Kundera. While discussing Milan Kundera, we have already talked about the apodictic message, the brevity. Similarly, Marquez also talks about omission, which is a common goal both for a magical realist writing as well as any kind of postmodern artwork in general, right? Omitting certain events, omitting certain descriptions which need to be addressed by the reader. One of the defining factors of magical realism is this omission, which is called authorial reticence. The author withholds certain information which is to be worked at on the reader's end, at the level of the reader's mind. The reader has to complement what the writer or the author has not written or not expressed directly. These gaps and pauses play an important role in the context of Marquez's social protest. So, in 100 Years of Solitude, the town of Macondo flocks to see the marvel of ice, and the idea of an insular domain may serve as an image of solitude which contributes to final eclipse of the human. So, Ice Nine is described as a seemingly magical substance, something which is distinct from natural ice and is emphasized as a man-made marvel. The author points out the horror that is associated with a human invention such as Ice Nine. Although it is a marvel, it is also a horror according to the author. So, the novel presents events and characters in a way that might appear exaggerated, hyperbolic or caricatured, but this style is inherent to magical realism. It involves the deliberate blending of fantasy with reality, creating a narrative that combines elements of the fantastical alongside the mundane or the everyday. So, to quote from the book, it rained for 4 years, 11 months and 2 days, unquote. The continuous and improbable rainfall described in the novel might seem unlikely in reality. It cannot rain continuously for 4 years, right? However, when the author at the same time is including specific details such as a defined time frame for which it has rained, there is a sense of authenticity imparted or associated with this event. So, the extraordinary occurrences and mythical elements in the narrative serve as a gateway for the readers to immerse themselves, to throw themselves into the author's fictional world, So, the plot of the novel encompasses the significant events that shape the lives of its characters over a period of time. In 100 Years of Solitude, the narrative revolves around pivotal moments in the lives of the Buendia family in this village of Macondo, which include births, deaths, and marriages, all of which are portrayed as major turning points in the novel. So, through the narrative events, Marquez documents the history of Colombia, influenced by the conservative victors, the Macondo town's encounter with the UFC or United Fruit Company, and the era of the violence. Regarding UFC, Marquez says, I quote, endowed with means that had been reserved for divine providence in former times, the company changed the pattern of the rains, accelerated the cycle of harvests, and moved the river from where it had always been. Unquote. It imported dictatorial foreigners and hired assassins with machetes to run the town. It unleashed a wave of bullets on striking workers in the plaza. When the banana company leaves, Macondo is in ruins. He incorporates magical elements in order to represent the everyday reality and the harrowing experience, the violence that was prevalent in Latin America. So, a girl who is lifted into the sky and various other such similar phenomena that cannot be explained in a normal way by normal logic is something that comprises magical realism precisely. In the world that Marquez has created in his novel, the remarkable, world of Macondo that he creates, this is where we see that the magical things are accepted as a part of one's everyday mundane life, and no one tries to even explain or doubt them. No one even tries to think about them. They happen like we eat and sleep, right? So, it's also perhaps a commentary that if a company like UFC can happen, if humans can perpetuate so much of cruelty, if the colonial apparatuses, the colonial methods and apparatus of violence is possible, then this is also possible. Nothing is impossible actually. If humans can inflict so much of violence on one another, if the natural human life can be violated, human dignity can be violated so much, then everything is perhaps possible after that. So, a magical realism becomes a commentary on the colonial apparatus. The novel follows the Buendia family's lives over several generations, and Marquez intertwines the human experience with elements of supernatural. So, Marquez shifts seamlessly between the realistic and the fantastic, creating a world that is both familiar and alien to the readers. The novel is, peppered with certain patterns, certain repeated motifs that keep coming back, such as the appearance of yellow butterflies. The yellow butterflies keep coming back, and the rain that falls for 4 years, 11 months, and 2 days. These motifs, these repeated patterns, lend the narrative a dream-like quality and highlights the cyclic nature of history. It defies the Western concept of a linear time progression that is driven by logic and rationality. So, the magical realism in Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, as well as in his other work, Love in the Time of Cholera, is largely focused on exploring the complex relationships between individual humans rather than using the technique for commentary on political events. Garcia Marquez employs magical realism in order to highlight the strange, absurd, and sometimes humorous aspects of human life. From the reader's standpoint, this novel is categorized as postmodernist, and yet it also intricately engages with the postcolonial perspectives, the postcolonial problems and questions. Marquez's depiction of the fictional town of Macondo in its pristine state, in its pristine form, where the residents are unfamiliar with basic elements such as ice and magnet, serves as an allegory for the pre-colonial conditions of the South American country Colombia. Jose Arcadio Buendia, who is the head of the Buendia family, was notably influenced by a number of changes, setting off a series of unfortunate events that ultimately culminated in the downfall of Macondo. The Macondians lack a specific religious practice, but the spectacle of levitation that is induced by hot chocolate, which is demonstrated by Father Nicanor Reina, the town's first priest, instills in them a belief of the Christian God. A town that did not have an organized sense of religion, an institutionalized sense of religion, later starts understanding the Christian God. It's a peculiar interface, intersection with Christianity and its penetration into a pre-colonial ancient kind of a town that Macondo is, right? So, this fictional event underscores the coercive conversion tactics employed by the Christian missionaries during colonization, which led to a distorted amalgamation of cultures, causing identity crisis of the colonized, among the colonized. The imposition of the colonizers' religion as superior over the native faith contributes to societal chaos and psychological turmoil and dilemmas, prompting individuals to question their own identity, the identity that they have inherited, that their forefathers have passed down to them. This process of colonizing age-old beliefs, pre-colonial and ancient beliefs, creates a profound impact on both the society and the individual psychology. So, magical realism in the novel not only blends reality with fiction, but also serves as a lens for a critical examination of the Colombian history. While the author acknowledges the personal flaws within the Buendia family, such as incestuous relationships leading to unfortunate consequences, the narrative also underscores the significant role played by the external forces, right, in the form of UFC in their ultimate downfall. In the novel, Aureliano Babylonia's reinterpretation of Malkides' text serves as a crucial tool for readers to fill in the gaps surrounding the Banana massacre, which transpired between December 5th and 6th. This event is an allusion to industrialization by foreign powers, and it also signifies a means of asserting dominance over another group, which results in widespread violence and the deaths of plantation workers. The bodies of these workers are discreetly transported on carts and dumped to avoid political controversy, reflecting an act of power play. So, Colonel Aureliano Buendia, who led a war against the conservative forces, witnessed this incident that had facilitated imperialist power and collaboration with a dictatorial political force, a dictatorial police force. So, we see that the magical realist devices for critiquing the colonial apparatus, the forces of industrialization are very powerful. They render an alternative lens, an alternative perspective with which to see the history of Colombia. So, in this regard, Marquez's novel is very successful in a way, shaping, in spearheading this genre called magical realism. How magical realism, how the light hearted tone of the author can be deployed towards explaining very grave, very profound themes and topics. With this, I am going to end our lecture here today, and let's meet in our next lecture for another round of discussions. Thank you.